Alright, so welcome to how to make a tower defense in Unity. I was really looking forward to making this because if any people from back when I was at like 20, 50 subscribers knows this, I had a tower defense game that I have been trying to perfect, and I kind of abandoned it as I am trying to really find more inspiration. And you guys know that I love tower defense games. I released Cubevasion, which is a tower defense game. I have The Final Stand, once again, which is a tower defense game. And I just really love developing tower defense games. I just like watching AI just go at it against each other. And I find it really cool because when you look at how it works under the hood, it's very intricate and complex. And yeah, tower defense games are basically cool, fun to watch. And I'm going to show you how you can make one of these cool experiences. So this series is also going to include multi-threading your code. I'm going to introduce the job system and kind of show practical uses of the job system. I had a mini series for the job system, card at the top right if you want to go check it out, and it basically shows examples, but now I'm going to be showing practical examples, and this tower defense game will be a practical example. So to quickly start off, I want to add in character movement. And to do this, I'm going to create an empty object and reset the position, and I can just name this player. I'm going to attach the main camera to this and set the Z to 0 so it is at the origin of the player but offset by 1, so it's like the head of the player. And on the player object, I'm going to put in a character controller, and in our project we're going to create a new folder, call this let's just call this, I'm going to call this classes, and inside of here I'm going to create another subfolder and call this player. And in this player folder we can finally create our movement class, so I can just call this player movement. So for the player movement, I already have a video that generally goes in depth on how to create player movement in Unity. So to quickly go over this, I'm just gonna edit the script, get rid of this, and pull out my friend Jarvis. If you guys remember Jarvis back when I only had like 34 subscribers once again, I gave Jarvis some upgrades. So real quick, we're gonna do, just kind of dock this on the right. Hey Jarvis.
Yes, sir.
Paste my freeform character controller movement.
Pasting freeform character controller movement.
And there you go. Alright, goodbye Jarvis. I don't need you anymore. And there you go. That's how Jarvis works. So I'm just going to quickly explain how this works. So it's basically the same character controller movement, but instead of adding jumping, we're basically just changing the velocity to 1 and -1 if we're pressing space or left shift, and resetting it to default so you just don't go flying without any input. So once again, if you want an in-depth video of this movement, there will be a card on the top right or a link in the description. So go check that out if you really want to understand it. But here is the player movement code. Here we have our variables, we have our velocity, movement input, mouse input, X rotation for our camera movement. We have a reference to our player camera transform, our character controller, our speed and sensitivity. And in the update method, we basically set our movement input vectors to our get axes of our horizontal, vertical, our mouse X and Y. So we actually have player input based off of an axis. And after that, we then move the player and move the camera. So in moving the player camera, we just take our X rotation float, which we have up here, and we subtract it by our player mouse input .y and multiplied by our sensitivity, which is over here. And after that, we then just rotate the player object that this class is attached to by our player mouse input X, multiply our sensitivity, and we set the player camera's local rotation to quaternion Euler to a new quaternion.Euler angle of X rotation and 0, 0. Now for the move player, we basically set up a directional move vector, which is basically the direction in which our game object is pointing towards based off of our player move input. After that, we check if we press space or left shift to determine whether or not our velocity should be going up or down, or 1 and -1. And after that, we move the controller based off of our move input multiplied by speed by time to delta time, and our velocity multiplied by the speed multiplied by time to delta time. And after that, we set our velocity.y to 0 to prevent our character controller from moving up or down for an infinite amount of time without any input. So yeah, this is the player movement class. Alright, so now that we have our player movement all set up, we can kind of just set our height to 1 and put our player down to the origin, since this isn't really like a flying person. We're kind of just a flying orb in the sky. And now with your player movement class, we can just take our character controller and assign our variables here. Set my speed to 4, sensitivity to 4, and there you go. We now have a working player movement class. So we can look up and down, we can move up and down, and there you go. Now let's get into the main thing that I want to do in this video, which is creating the map for a tower defense. So to create our map, let me just quickly get this out of the way. We have to consider multiple things. We need to consider the scale of the map. That is really important, because when you're making a map for a tower defense, especially when you're making multiple maps for a tower defense, you really need to worry about your scaling, because on one map could be larger than another, and the ranges of the towers that you have may not be as efficient on one map compared to another. So the way I like to maintain my scaling is using the grid that is already provided by Unity over here. To turn it on, you just go to the top of the scene bar here, and you can see the grid axis. Set the opacity to whatever you like. I'm just going to use 1 for now. And with this grid, I set up my range values based off of this grid, and yeah. So to start off, I'm going to create another empty game object and just call this the map. And this is just to keep our hierarchy nice and organized. So now let's create a cube. I don't really like using a plane because there's a lot of geometry on it. So if I go to shaded wireframe here in the shading mode, you could see how many faces are on this plane. There's a lot compared to just a regular cube here. So I like to try and minimize the geometry, since in a tower defense game there will be a lot of enemies. There will be a lot of towers also. So it's good to try and optimize your map so your player can have as much fun as possible just spamming towers and watching things go boom. So we can get rid of our plane here, and we can just scale our cube to whichever size we like. So I might do a 20 by 20 map, just like this. There you go. And yeah, this is, I guess, is a good scale for now. This is a good size of a map for now. And we can just call this the base plate. Oh, base plate Roblox moment. Okay. And now we can, in our assets folder, we can now create a new folder for rendering assets, or just call it just rendering for now. And inside we can create a subfolder and call this materials. And inside of our materials folder, we create another folder called maps, or map materials. And once again, inside of this folder, we create the folder based off of the name of our map. So I guess I could just call this level 1. There you go. This is the level 1 materials. And now within this folder, let's make our plane here grass. So I can just call this grass. Assign this to my base plate here, and we can just make it a nice shade of green. Kind of looks like grass, I guess. Lower the smoothness, and there you go. We got some nice grass. Since this base plate will never really move, we can just set this to static, so we can bake light maps onto this whenever we want to. And now let's get working on the path. So to really see the grid, we kind of have to move this down a bit. There you go. So we can work with our scaling properly, and I'm just going to switch back to shaded so I don't see the geometry. And yeah, let's create our map, or a path. So now in our map folder, we can create another empty game object, and I can just call this path. And inside of here, we can just create a, I guess, another cube, and we could just call this path piece. And to make it easier on modifying our path in Unity, at the top right you'll see this axes up here, and if you click in the center it'll turn to isometric mode, which basically is like looks like this, and if you lock it to a specific axis it looks like as if it is two-dimensional, and this will help us greatly in wanting to create our path. So looking at the grid here, I kind of want to have like a kind of like a U kind of shape, maybe like an S pattern to keep it simple. So to modify this, instead of using the scale tool, because when you use the scale tool you could see how it kind of scales in both directions, we're going to use this rect tool, which will let us pull it into its own direction and it won't scale on the other side. So I guess I can have this go down to kind of try and keep it on the grid, and there you go. Yeah, this is our path. So now what we can do is kind of move this down a bit, so we can just quickly move it down like that, and we can set these all to static since these will never move. So set this to static, and there you go. We now have our path. Now in our map materials we can create a new material, and we can call this our path color, or yeah, our path color, and for each of our path pieces we can assign the material to the path pieces we have here, and we can now change the color. So since I have kind of grass over here, I want to stick to the theme that's like a dirt road. So I guess kind of put in between orange there, move it down like that, and turn off reflections and specular highlights, since I don't think dirt is that reflective or shiny. So, and turn down the smoothness, and there you go, we have our path. So since we want enemies to, or towers to be placed on this base plate, we're going to have to create separate layers for our path pieces and our base plates. So what we can do is create tags for our path piece and base plate for us to check whenever we are placing towers. So in our tags we can just create a new one. I can call this let's say the can place tag. So go to our base plate here and assign the can place tag to it, and for our path pieces we create a new tag and call this ignore place or can't place. I'll just call this can't place. So we go over all of our path pieces and set it to can't place. And there you go. We have the basics of our map set up. We have a place where we can put down our towers, and the path where we cannot place towers. And to make this interesting, we could put hills. So what we, for like maybe, I don't know, maybe a sniping unit or something like that. So what we can do is just we can create another empty game object, and we can just call this hill. And in here we can put in a cube, and we can move this hill game object over to a single grid cell, so we can kind of scale this based off of our map. And I guess we can have it as big as something like that. So we can move this up, and we can make this our grass material, and let's make it a bit bigger. Let's make it a bit larger. Oh, whoops. 1 1 3 3. There you go. Okay. So yeah, let's make this a bit taller. So I guess like this. This gives, putting hills like this gives the game, that gives the tower defense game a whole new dimension of placing things. It isn't really much, but it feels like you have to think more when you're placing down units. So just having a hill over here, or just a cube, will make it really stand out. So we have a hill. I guess we can move this a bit closer, just like this, and we can kind of scale this up a bit more. I guess this whole area could be a hill. Yeah, this can be an entire hill. There you go. So we got a nice little hill here, and we have just general placement area. So yeah, this is our map. I'm pretty happy with this, and now we need to set it up for the enemy AI, which will be handled I think in the third episode of the series. So in your map, create another empty game object, and you're going to call this nodes. And this will be for when we want to move our enemies to each node. So we go down here, around, and to set this up, what I like to do is use cube objects, as it helps me visualize where the enemies will go. So once again, go to isometric mode, lock up to the y-axis, and now we can set up our nodes. So just put it in the way you want your path to be traversed. So this first node is going to be put at the top here, and make sure it's kind of like halfway in, so the origin of the cube is kind of like there, and this is where we're going to set the pivot of our enemies. So once again, go back to isometric, go to y-axis so we could view it from the top down, and Control D to duplicate the cube, move it down the path on how you would like for it to be traversed by the enemies, and keep duplicating until you reach the end of the path. So this will go here, here, there, and there. And thanks to Unity, the way they handle the duplication of objects, they number it so you don't have to sort it manually. You could see that the first node will always be first, and then it goes down and all the way around. And now what we can do is just get rid of the box collider on these nodes, the mesh renderer, and the mesh filter, since we don't really need those. They're really just containers for our positions where the enemies will have to go. So, and I guess you can rename these, so I can just call this node. Just get rid of cube and rename them all to node. And there you go. We now have our whole map set up. We have a hill, we have our base plate, and our path. Oh yeah, and don't forget, for the hill, we're going to have to layer this to can place. And there you go, since we also want to be able to place units on our hill over here. And for this next part, this is fairly optional. This is really just putting a border around the map to make it feel more whole and complete. So what I like to do, I just create another empty game object, call this borders, and I like to make it out of stone. So in my map materials level 1 folder, create a new material, call this I guess stone, and it's just gonna be gray, no reflections, maybe, yeah, just some specular highlights. Tune down the smoothness, and inside the borders we create a new cube object, and we can just scale this all the way across and high up. So we can move this up a bit, just like that, and I guess move it back. Just like that. There you go. We can assign our stone material to this. We can call this wall. Duplicate it, move it to the other side. And for this wall on this side, we're going to make it look like the enemies kind of disappear into obscurity, like as if they reach their destination. So we can split the wall here, duplicate it over, and kind of put it like that. We could duplicate our wall again, move it down over here so it doesn't look like the enemies just fell into nowhere. Move this up, and there you go. We now have a little exit for our enemies. And now we can kind of set an origin. I'm going to set this as the origin. We can call this, just keep this as wall, and take the other objects and set it as a child of this object, so it keeps our inspector once again nice and clean. Now we can just duplicate this wall again, rotate it over 90 degrees, just like that, and move it onto the back side of our map. So, just like this. Let me just check if it's, okay, it's inside of it a bit. There you go, like that. Oh, whoops, and we can just move this over, just like so. There you go. Now, and we have to just take care of this side. And there you go, we have a complete little entrance for where enemies can come from. And now, again, we choose like an origin, I guess this wall. And we can take all these walls, put it inside of this wall, and there you go. We now have each side walled off, so it looks like it's a complete and full map. And now what we can do is, within these walls, we can create a new quad to show like a black plane. There you go. And we can create a material that will show that it's really dark where the enemies are coming from. Kind of just move this up a bit, and we can even take our path piece here and have it extend further in. So it looks like the path extends for a longer way. And we could take our node here, and we can move this back a bit. So like it looks like the enemies are coming out of this this entryway. So there you go. And now we create a new material, and we can call this, I guess, fade or darkness. And to make it really pop, we just go into our shader right over here. We click on this, go to unlit, and just do color. And after that, we attach it to our quad, and then we set the color to black. There you go, and it looks like it's completely dark. It's like can't even see in it. And we could do this to the other side here. So we can duplicate this over, and we can move it over into here. And same for how we did the entrance. We can take this path piece, extend it inside, kind of like inside, showing how the path continues on for a while, and move our node back inside also, so it looks like the enemies are actually going somewhere. And now we can take our quad, we can rotate this, and we can move it back in to this little entryway. And there you go, we have a complete map. And I guess you can call these fade outs or something. I'm just going to keep these as fade out, and put these as child to the wall that has the little entryway. So for me, it's the walls that have all the children, so like all the extra walls, kind of making a carve out for an exit and entrance. And there you go, we have a complete map. Now what we can do with our player controller, we can go around and explore this. So if I just move this down to maybe like this, we can hit play, and we can just go around exploring your map with your character controller. Go around it, but we can fix this. We could just put an invisible wall on top over here. And yeah, let's quickly do that. So we can create an invisible wall. So I guess you could take this wall over here, and you can move it up a little bit up, and you can have it cover the entire top of the map. And this time, you just get rid of the mesh filter and the renderer, so it's just a big collider. And there you go. Now the player cannot fly out the map. And maybe you need to like lower the hill a bit, so the player can actually go over here. And there you go. Now the player is only allowed to stay within this game room, which is the map, and they cannot leave. They cannot leave the game, and they will just play out the game how it's supposed to be. See, now I can't even go up anymore. Have a nice hill, and I don't think I can even go in here because of the colliders. Yeah, I can't go in there. Can't go in the quads. Can't leave. And there you go. That is it for this part of the series. We created our tower defense map. We set up all the layer masks. We set up all the tags, actually. We set up the tags for the path, the hills, and the base plates so we can properly place towers. And in the next video, I'm going to go over the game loop. And the game loop is basically what the game will run off of. It's going to handle running all the towers, running all the enemies, running the wave system, running basically everything that's going to happen in the game. So stay tuned for that video, and I'll see you then. Goodbye.